Welcome back. Time for this very precious interview. Now, Harambees have become a cultural way of life in Kenya as a sure community-based self-help mechanism. From time to time, you will get, a card inviting you to be a guest of honor at a function whose sole purpose is to raise funds. Schools have been built, religious institutions established, people have gone to school and lives have been saved, courtesy of money raised during Harambees. However, as years go by, some quarters see the need to handle Harambees differently in light of emerging concerns of corruption. In the words of our guest this morning, should we continue with it or kiss the initiative goodbye? Welcome to the Power Breakfast Show.
Thank you very much.
Professor Anyang Nyong'o-Kisumu, Senator. Very well. So, of course, yesterday we focused on this particular story that was written on the Star that basically brought in the picture of you proposing Harambees, money raised during Harambee, be taxed. Perhaps you could clarify that.
That was a misrepresentation.
That was a complete misrepresentation of what we said. Very unfortunate, really, because it really defeats the purpose for which we are conducting this discussion with the public and with leaders as an ad hoc committee of the Senate. Ours is not to tax money raised for Harambe. That would be utter nonsense and very stupid. What we said is that when you give for philanthropy, doing good, whether it is through Harambe or through donation to a good cause, that money that you give should get tax relief. In other words, it should be tax deductible. I think using the word tax deductible is what was complicated to the reporter. He didn't quite understand what that meant. But essentially it means tax relief, which is a very common thing in philanthropic world.
What we are suggesting is that if you contribute money to Harambe, when you fill your income tax forms at the end of the year, you say that this year I contributed 100,000
exactly
to various charities.
Yeah. So don't take it as my income.
So it wasn't an income because I gave it.
Because I gave it away.
So they refund the money income tax.
Yeah.
People refund them.
Yeah. You see, and that is what most businesses do. If you remember, even in this country, we have banks like Equity Bank, their Equity Foundation, or Barclays Bank Foundation, KCB Foundation, so that they put some of their profits into this foundation to do good. And when they do that, that money is not taxed because it is used for good cause, social development, infrastructural improvement, and so on. And this started many years ago in the Western world. The famous foundations like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, they're not taxed for the money that they have that they use for good cause. Now, at the moment, you see...
The current one actually might be the Bill Gates Foundation.
Bill Gates Foundation.
Which is giving money here.
Exactly. And if we do this, we shall encourage many people to put money in trust funds or foundations for long-term Harambe work, so that it doesn't become a spontaneous ad hoc thing. Because there are certain things really that should receive this kind of support. For example, I'll give you an example. Recently, I'm involved in building a school in my county, named after me. We held an Harambe. We raised over 1 million shillings. We started work. But that is not enough. You will have to continue doing other things. Now, if you keep on just calling Harambe, you may not do as effective work as you could if you had a lump sum of money from a trust fund or a foundation to do it once and for all. Now, we are doing this because with devolved government, where government is now going up to the village level, you have the county government, the sub-county government, the ward government, the village government. It is now possible for us to begin planning right from the village what kind of needs we have that need support, which cannot be financed solely from county funds. The villagers can say, look, okay, every month we shall have a chicken auction. People will bring their chicken, we auction them. The money we get, we put in a trust fund, which you can use at the end of the year to support children who are going to high school who may not have resources, or admitted to university who may not have school fees. Then, in that kind of trust fund, you are not taxing the fund, but if somebody comes who is taxable with a good sum of money, say, look, I see you villagers, you have a very good cause here. I'll put in this trust fund 200,000 shillings. At the end of the year, when I file my income tax, I will say, I gave 200,000 shillings to a village trust fund. Don't tax me on it, because I've already contributed to social development.
How the income tax, I wanted to be administered. Maybe you pass a lot, but how will you prove that you gave?
Yeah, that is very interesting. In fact, we were discussing this. We have two experts working with us. One is a tax expert. The other one is an expert on social development. And what the tax expert said, there are two ways of doing it. One, we have already an institution called Kenya Trust Development Fund, KTDF. Now, KTDF has been doing this thing for a long time. What we could do is we have KTDF vouchers. If you want to donate to a trust fund or a foundation, you can go and buy a KTDF voucher of 200,000 shillings and go and give the trust fund. They will redeem the money from KTDF so that you don't give cash. You give a voucher like a check. It's the equivalent of a check, the promissory note. Now, KTDF will have records of people who have bought these certificates. And so when you fill, you have your certificate number from KTDF, and it can be checked by the taxman. If you cheat, of course, the penalty is very high. It's like giving a bouncing check.
Yeah, just looking at, of course, the place of Harambees in our society. Currently, you said Senate ad hoc committee is touring counties basically to get views from the people. In your article, you said, while holding discussions with the County Assembly of Kakamega, the general feeling was that Harambees should be abolished. Is that so? Yeah,
well, it's very interesting because, and I had to report what people said. I can't invent. You know, when you're carrying a survey, you don't misrepresent people. So people spoke, and they felt very strongly. And they had good reasons, really. We shouldn't dismiss those reasons. They were saying, fine, when you look down the path of history, we'll find that when Harambe was started in the 60s, and I remember I was in high school then, it was mainly for secondary schools, building secondary schools, or primary schools for that matter, and health facilities. You remember the Gatundu self-help project? You know, and that is because there were very few schools in the country. And the then government felt that, you know, and they have been used to this. You remember Githunguri was originally built through self-help, that we should have self-help. So Harambe was started.
I went to Harambe school myself. High school I went to was Harambe.
Yeah, exactly. And my former intermediate school became an Harambe secondary school. And most of these schools were eventually taken over by the government. Now, these fellows were saying, the MRCs, that, look, now we have devolved government with specific funds to do social development and infrastructure. And with the experience that even government then took over these schools, why don't we let proper institutions do that work rather than do it through Harambe? I think a good point. When we went on, I remember in the article, somebody stood, no, let's not abolish Harambe altogether. Let us at least leave certain initiatives that can be financed by Harambe. And then people say, you also have a point. So there were 2 points of view. One, please stop Harambe for things like schools and so on. It's two major tasks. It's better to have properly institutionalized funds run by county government and national government to do that, because our history shows that when we started Harambe, it was taken over anyway. Now we should move further and institutionalize infrastructural development that way. But let us leave Harambe for things that come and go, like funerals, like suddenly a young man or a young woman has been called to take some educational opportunities somewhere and there's no money, yes, you can do that. And then let us have proper regulations so that people don't cheat. You remember the example given to us by Senator Moses Wetangula of a magistrate? You see, but you see, good things can be spoiled by wicked people if there are no proper regulations and controls. So we are saying, let us not spoil the good thing by not having proper regulations, which will make it achieve its goals. And I know that this has been a concern for a long time. Even the year 2003 in Parliament, Koigo Amwere had a commission, a special committee on Harambees, which reported to the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs in December 2003. We have the report. This is not to forget that even since 1960, we have a public collections law in this country. But it has been prominent, but it's not being observed. Yeah. And, so all these things, we should put them together and now create a law which is realistic and which will also help encourage philanthropy, but regulate philanthropy too, so that wicked people or excesses don't occur.
All right. Of course, you look at the past, we've had laws that come in, even the Elections Act 2011, basically barred politicians from participating in fundraising. Public servants, at least 8 months before the elections. And to some extent, it gives us a picture of politicians are quick not to participate in such noble initiatives, and that is why even when the question of salaries came in, some politicians would say, if you say we earn this particular amount of money and you keep on giving us cards to donate and all that, how would you sort of create an understanding of the place of politicians?
Well, we have the Public Officers Ethics Act, which regulate the extent to which leaders, not just politicians and public officers, should engage in philanthropy. They are not prohibited from engaging in philanthropy, not at all, but they're expected to behave in philanthropy without abuse of office. That is very important, because I know that if you take the example of the magistrate who had cards for her wedding in her chambers, that's abuse of office. At the same time, if you leave it as a free-for-all thing, whereby you are a leader, be you a civil servant or a police officer or a politician or so on, and every month you have a deck of cards on your desk requiring you to go to Harambees, it can be quite something. So, for one, we should realize that giving is, of course, voluntary. You can choose to select from what you have, what you are going to give, where you are going to give. But at the same time, if the populace, the citizenry, think or assume that every social development problem can only be financed to Harambees, it can lead to an overburdening public officials or public officers or any leader for that matter. And that is why we are saying, let us make sure that those things that can be done through proper institutionalized mechanism where we all pay taxes, so that either the national government or county government can do that. Let's be very clear about that. And then let us leave others which will be subject to philanthropy. If we do that, then the deck of cards which get stuck up in people's offices will reduce tremendously. I'll give you an example. When we started with CDF in 2003, I had been a member of parliament for 10 years then. And I remember very clearly the number of Harambees for building schools going down considerably. Yeah. Considerably. And people were very happy. Now there were more Harambees for school fees
or
hospitals. You see,
not building police stations.
Not building police stations and chief's camps and so on. You see, and I think that's a good development. And what I'm saying is that, for example, in the area of health, and this has been said all over. I remember the late Julius Meme, when he was director of Kenyatta National Hospital, wrote a very, very interesting article on Kenyatta National Hospital with some of his other colleagues. And he said in that article, I remember in 1999, the problem we have in this hospital of people not paying their hospital bills can be cured if we had in this country social health insurance scheme proper for everybody. The hospital will benefit, the people will benefit, the government will benefit, everybody will benefit. So long as we don't have that, this hospital will continue to suffer and the delivery of services will continue to be very inefficient. Now, if we, and I've always been saying this, if we had proper social health insurance in this country, even Harambees for health bills will go down. So there are non-proven ways of pooling resources together for social and economic development without necessarily relying on Harambe. We can confine Harambe to much more manageable.
Maybe we should go to another subject. Yesterday, CORD met, and you are fighting VAT. I think one of the things you said is that you want the laws changed, the VAT Act changed.
Yeah, well.
And I think the same thing is being said by Jubilee. I saw Kindiki saying that they also want, why can't we have a bipartisan committee to do that instead of fighting?
No. I don't think we're fighting. CORD made what we consider is our stand as a coalition. In politics, this is quite civilized. I mean, you must let the public know what you stand on an issue. And so our colleagues in Jubilee have also made the public know where their stand is. Now that we know where everybody stands, we can sit down and discuss. Yes.
Of course, something else that was discussed yesterday was the place of, blocking the government from the move to pull the country from the Rome Statute. And one thing that came out was that CORD will use all means to block the government's move.
Well,
what does that mean?
Well, that means parliamentary, the parliamentary path.
But even the Senate passed also will to.
When I say parliamentary, I mean both Senate,
both Senate
and the National Assembly.
National Assembly, yes.
Well, you see, because the ruling coalition has the majority. Sure. So, but the minority had their say. So we had our say in the Senate, we had our say in the National Assembly, and we have made it very clear to the people of Kenya that we as a coalition don't support Kenya pulling out from the Rome Statute for very good reasons. One, because you don't pull out because a specific issue has occurred. You pull out when you look at the whole history of the nation, now and in the future. We do not know 10 years from today what kind of rogue government we may have, or what rogue individual somewhere we may have who would destroy people's lives unnecessarily. And I think the Rome Statute was established to protect human rights.
So
human rights as a universal
we agree about that. How do you then stop Jubilee?
Well, we will go to Parliament and move motions and propose measures to stop the bill that is now being brought to Parliament, being passed. That is what we shall do. We may succeed, we may fail, but we cannot keep away from doing it by censoring ourselves aforetime.
There is also a move to stop judges, magistrates, members of parliament from being state officers.
That is wrong.
So
I think I will speak with authority of the coalition that we do not support that.
As CORD.
As CORD.
Reason?
Reason being, if you look at the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, it is very clear on leadership and integrity. Unless you're going to completely remove Chapter 6 of the Constitution, you can't do it. I think when we framed the Constitution that way, there was a very good reason for doing it. And you remember Chapter 6 of the Constitution also mandates Parliament to pass a public officers and ethics law as well as an anti-corruption law, both of which already exist, but gives Parliament that responsibility. Now, I do not think that it would be in the spirit of the Constitution and in the spirit of serving the people of Kenya to amend the law to stop us from being public officers. It is not just creating an act of Parliament. That act of Parliament is subordinate to the Constitution. The Constitution in Chapter 6 already lays down principles of leadership and integrity. But then it gives Parliament the responsibility of passing a law on two issues: anti-corruption and public officers' ethics. Yeah.
Right, so just perhaps to wind up, a great deal of comments have been coming in. This is Festus from Nairobi, says, Professor Anyang Nyong'o is discussing a topic of national importance, that is in relation to Harambees. Another one says, this Professor Anyang Nyong'o has a point. The problem is misrepresentation of the media. And then somebody here, Dr. Rwanda, says, it's the first time professors come with a clear leadership agenda, non-political, thanks. Perhaps you could just give your final word in relation to the Harambees as we wind up.
Well, it's not the first time, but I mean, that of course is prerogative. I think in relation to Harambee, what I could say is that looking into the future, especially as we are hoping and striving to be a middle-income nation by the year 2030, we must accept that we cannot continue doing things as we did it in the old way. We must continue modernizing the way we do things, including things like Harambee. Otherwise, Vision 2030 would not make sense. Vision 2030 expects us to be innovative in terms of moving forward into the future. I see ourselves by the year 2030 having trusts and foundations financed by ordinary Kenyans to support social development and not depending on this rather expensive and difficult to organize ad hoc manner of raising funds. Let us leave that to incidental things like funerals, which you can never predict.
But isn't it the fact that some politicians make foundations which are supposed to be charitable things, but they do use it for politics?
Well, those are some of the things that Public Officers Ethics Act should deal with, and also the taxman should deal with. When a foundation is established, its aims and objectives must be made very clear. There are definitely political foundations, like the German foundations are political. Yeah, the Hans Seidel Foundation is a political foundation. A Kenyan can decide also to establish a political foundation. Then you know it is a political foundation. It finances political causes, campaigns, and so on. And so the tax regime or whatever it is will be subject to the necessary laws. So let us not make the false assumption the foundations are only for social development. There are also foundations for other causes as well.
Okay.
All right, so thank you so much. Talking to Honorable Professor Anyang Nyong'o. We'll be right back.